Hi everyone, my name is Deb Spearing and I am the head of human resources here at Pointman. I'm so glad to have you join me for our webinar today, or what we've been calling the Debinar. I've been with Pointman for about a year and a half, but before that I spent a number of years working in customer service oriented positions before going off and getting my doctorate in industrial and organizational psychology, with a strong focus on workplace motivation and why employees do or sometimes don't do the things that employers want them to do. So I have to admit that the title of this webinar is a little misleading, because implementing new process isn't really a no problem kind of scenario. If it was that easy, I probably wouldn't be talking to you today. So working with people isn't exactly like working with machines. So in a machine, if you put all the parts in the right place and they're all in good working condition, the machine's going to work. Pending, of course, the influence of environmental challenges that we deal with, like a hurricane or an earthquake or a power outage. But when we're talking about getting people to do things, there's never a guarantee, even if they're put in the right place, kept in good working condition, and they have a good understanding of their purpose, that they're going to follow through with the activity we want them to complete. People will actually go out and create their own harmful environmental changes that you're going to have no control over as the employer. Maybe somebody's distracted because they got in a fight with their spouse that morning, or their kid's in the hospital, and you're probably not going to know about that. You might know about it, but either way, it's going to impact how well your people do their work. And you can't control that, and it's never going to change. But I'm going to provide you with a series of actions that can help increase the chances that all of your human parts are going to work in the way that you need them to, and that they're going to do that because it feels natural and it feels good for them to follow the rules at work. So I'm going to walk through a little bit of background on why implementing process is hard, how to recognize resistance when you see it in your employees, and what you can do to get your team on board. This is a really great quote that I love. Everyone loves progress, but nobody likes change. And clearly it's something that is universally true, no matter what Chinese restaurant you're eating at. The fact is that change is scary. And there's a reason that we talk about change a lot, or change management a lot in the business world. And that's because change has a lot of power. People will often tell you that they're really adaptable. We hear that from employees all the time. I hear that in interviews all the time. I'm really adaptable and I'm good with change. And maybe they are, but the vast majority of people are not going to be naturally drawn or attracted to constant change, because change always means the potential for the unknown and the potential for failure. And failure always feels terrible. So I'm going to nerd out for just a second and then very quickly get back into how to practically manage process change. So this is a Burke-Litwin model that you're seeing, and it's just one of many, many models that outlines the organizational drivers of change and stuff that happens in an organization that makes change happen. So from some broad factors that you see here, like mission, strategy, and culture, to some more diverse, individual, unique factors like tasks, and job tasks, and what motivates people to come to work every day, and what values your individual employees are motivated by. You'll notice that some things are absent here, like a mention of monetary incentives, bonuses, and even personal recognition. And there's a reason for that. And that reason is that at the end of the day, those things don't really get the job done. There's things that we regard as soft factors, which are here in pink, and those are more intrinsic motivators. And then there's hard factors, which are in purple here. And those are the external things that we can do or apply or offer to people to get them to do the stuff we want them to do. And what we want to pay attention to is that we will want to use some of these hard factors to encourage change. But for the foundation for the process change is going to heavily rely on communicating the importance of the process to the rest of the organization. So as you can see here, There's absolutely a place for using rewards and recognition, like bonuses, but over time, those are going to be the things that won't move the mark significantly in the direction of getting employees to behave the way you want. But you'll notice here up at the top that just below top management sponsorship comes the importance of having a shared vision. You may have employees in your organization right now that don't 100% share your vision at the present time for the company, and so you're going to have to do whatever you can to pull them on board. But going forward as a more proactive measure, when you're looking for new employees, if you're able to recruit for or communicate your vision in your hiring process, you're going to have a better chance of getting people in your organization who genuinely want to support your vision, and then you'll have a better chance of getting a group of people that can be encouraged to follow the processes that you've laid out, provided they support that vision. And so even when you're, when you're interviewing candidates, or even if you're having your current employees refer people, you can let them know, share our vision with your friends and family and whoever you're referring. So like if somebody's got a cousin that's a great electrician and they think that they'd be really great at your organization, let them know, like, yeah, tell your cousin that, we're really devoted to providing top-notch customer service and creating an experience that homeowners love, and they want to call us back for repeat business over and over and over again. And if that resonates with him or her, then maybe they'll come and apply, but they already have that foundation for, if I take this job, this is what I'm getting into. And then something that I actually didn't highlight, but is really important, is I think it's the sixth thing down, where we see employee involvement hovering around 46% of utility. It's really important to get your employees on board with your vision, and they want to be heard, and they need to be heard way before they're willing or even mentally capable of buying into your team direction. So going forward, I'm going to talk a lot about the importance of listening to your employees and making them feel like you've actually heard them and that they're an important part of the equation, because they are an important part of the equation. So let's talk about what resistance looks like. I'm sure that you've seen resistance take on many forms. Just for example, have you ever found yourself verbally flogging your employees for not doing something small, like filling out their time cards? A lot of times we tend to think of behavior like that as being lazy or forgetful. I mean, surely employees want to fill out their timesheets, right? That's how we pay them. It makes logical sense to us to say, tell me what hours you worked so I can pay you for those hours. But in general, employers can't legally withhold pay from employees who don't fill out their timesheets. So you're going to have to use other methods. But trust me, if it really mattered to your employees, they would get it done. So let's take a look at what not following the rules looks like, and we can keep using the time card example. So you might have employees who just aren't engaging in the behavior on a regular basis. Like, I never think about my time cards at the end of a long day, or, oh, I plan to do it as soon as I get home or as soon as I get the truck back to the office, and then I forget. You might have employees who are engaging in the behavior sometimes or even most of the time. So, I usually fill out my time cards. So that should be good enough. You know when my regular shifts are. Or maybe they're actively avoiding the behavior. We hear things like, well, you already track my workday because you know my schedule, you know what jobs I'm going out on, so you should be able to figure it out. And it's a waste of the company's time if I'm taking time to fill out my time cards every day. And then you might also even have people who are preventing others from engaging in the behavior. So, maybe I always fill out my timesheets, but I've got this trainee and she's drinking from a fire hose right now, and she's got more important things to learn from me than how to punch a clock. So I'm sure she'll just figure it out on her own. So we're not going to worry about that. Now, believe it or not, your employees don't likely venture out into their days with the intention of defying your requests and not doing what you want them to do. Even though I'm sure you've encountered people that it seems like that, people that it seems like, oh my gosh, they have been put on this earth to destroy me, and they are purposefully acting against my wishes. But the next time you encounter an employee not doing what you want them to do, I want you to consider the real reason behind it. And maybe it's a reason like they don't believe in the process, they don't feel ownership over the process, or maybe they have a better idea. Or perhaps they just think they can get away with it and no one's going to punish them. Or they don't understand the impact on the big picture, or the impact on your customers. Or sometimes they are trying to serve the customers and they're just managing requests from customers that require them to skip essential processes of your service, of their day. And of course, if you haven't clearly communicated the process for them, or they're really complicated, you're going to have to do other things to remind them or make sure that they are trained, they do know and understand the process. So I'm not going to offer you some tips based on what you perceive the reasons for employee resistance to be. So maybe you're already looking at this list and you've got an idea in your head of, oh, I know that so-and-so always tells me that he's got a better idea of how we should do X, Y, Z. Maybe they want to be the innovator. So our first case is if your employees just don't buy it, they don't think it's a great idea. If you're the owner or decision maker, you will have an impossible time implementing processes that you don't genuinely believe are going to be successful. And if you aren't sure that proper execution of a procedure is going to bring success in your organization, or at least bring you closer to your goals, do not do it. You're not ready. It doesn't mean it's a bad idea. But if you don't believe in the process and believe it's worthwhile, your employees won't either. So it's always a good idea to practice how you're going to respond when employees ask, well, why are we doing it that way? So for example, if you're telling your employees, well, from now on, we're going to call back our customers the day after, the afternoon of, and make sure that they were satisfied with the service we provide. It's something that's similar to what we at Pointman call happy checks. So, and they just don't understand. They say, why would we bother the customer? They just wrote us this big check. They don't want to be reminded of the fact they needed their furnace repaired or something like that. You have to explain to them, well, why do you think this is important? And let's talk about why this contributes to our vision. And I am 100% sure that this is going to get us closer to our goals. If your employee asks you, are making these calls really going to satisfy our customers? And your response is, I think so. I read somewhere that this is a good idea, but I guess we'll see. You are not an owner who believes that this decision you've made is going to be successful. So you shouldn't be doing it, and you shouldn't be asking your employees to do it yet. If you think your employees are resisting because these are maybe your rules or even the rules of a previous general manager, and they don't want to follow along with something that someone else has designed, it's likely that they just don't feel a sense of ownership, or they maybe think there's a better way to do things. Should never avoid listening to ideas from your employees, especially the ones that are on the front line of the service you provide to your customers. Even if their ideas are a little impractical or impossible at the current moment, or they just seem crazy, providing multiple outlets for feedback will make people feel heard. And like I said before, that's really important. And then once in a while, you'll get a great idea from one of those resources and want to put it into action. Make sure that you give that individual credit for their innovative thoughts, and use the opportunity to encourage others to think about the way that they can help achieve the company vision that they can buy into. Other times you'll hear your employees making excuses, and a lot of times they're valid excuses. They're real, they make sense. But you should always use excuses as an opportunity to engage. Find out why this particular excuse is a barrier to compliance, and if it's legitimate, ask your employees for help in finding a way around it. If your employees think that they can get away with not doing something that takes time or effort because there are no consequences, you need to show them that there are consequences. And the best way to do this is to get support from their direct supervisors. And sometimes that's going to be you if you're the business owner or the general manager. Sometimes it's a middle manager. And it can even indirectly be not an actual supervisor, but just the most popular employee, the one who's been there the longest or knows the most, that everybody just seems to follow along with what they want. And it's important that you tell employees that engaging in an activity like, for example, filling out their time cards, even though it's small, is a requirement of their job. and not completing a portion of their duties will be seen as insubordination and can result in disciplinary action. Now, obviously, terminating an employee for not submitting their hours on time is a really stupid reason to have to fire somebody. So let's try and avoid that at all costs. But you can still present small tasks as being an essential part of the workday, and then make it clear to your employees that that is a reasonable expectation of that they show up and do their job, their whole job. I think you'd have a hard time finding an employee who would argue with the fact that, oh, you give me money because I show up and I do my job from beginning to end. That's kind of how it works. If you've got job descriptions for your staff, great. Those job descriptions can get down to the nuts and bolts of essential job duties. Even if they're small, if there's things that you know that your employees forget to do or processes they have a hard time following, you can outline that right in their job description and then make sure you communicate it with them. If you don't have job descriptions, it's a good idea to take some time to prepare them so you can be confident that your employees know what's expected from them and also that you can hold them accountable. Another problem could be that they don't understand why the process is actually really significant. So you're going to have to show them, or better yet, ask them to tell you why they think it's important. People are way more likely to buy into the importance of concepts that they've come up with on their own. If they're not sure, if your employees aren't sure or just can't communicate the importance of doing something, make sure at that point that you've told them why it's important to the business, or to the employee themselves, or to your customers. So even something like filling out time cards can help contribute to that employee's well-being. If you point out the fact that having their time cards helps you to plan how many employees you need for a certain role, or planning for employees to have more flexible vacation time, or even helping to control shift hours. So you're making sure that your technicians and your employees are well rested and they show up at homeowners' houses when they're on their A game all the time. And if you can't come up with a reason for that the process supports your vision, of course, it might be time that you rethink its purpose and its suitability in your organization. And once people understand the big picture, it might also be helpful, maybe even give them a visible representation of how it works and why you want it. So like a leaderboard to show who's the most successful at meeting expectations for the week. People want to adopt tactics that are going to look successful to others and that other people are going to know they were successful at. So from that point, you can make all kinds of decisions based on who's at the top of the leaderboard related to incentives, awards, maybe allowing people to have certain shift preferences. But keep in mind that those things aren't going to be the long-term drivers that keep employees doing what you want them to do in the long term. And of course, from time to time, you're going to get customer requests that ask your employees to deviate from their set processes. So let's say that time is of the essence for a customer, and you know that they called you because they're pretty sure that they know the part of the AC unit that's broken and they just want you to replace it. And they say, oh, you don't have to bother cleaning it out. We'll get to it later. Just replace the part and be on your way. You might want to help your employees kind of prepare canned responses for those requests. Like, well, it's really essential that I clean out the unit before I get started. I surely don't want to miss something that that I wouldn't have found if it wasn't clean, and I'd have to come back and repair it the next day. So it's really important for me to do my best work and not have to cause you any more pain by something that I can't see if I just take 5-10 minutes and do our cleaning routine. And provide and practice those responses that will help your employees to communicate to your customers why it's important that they don't skip steps. Another circumstance could be just if your employees don't understand what you want because they're not trained or the process is too complicated to remember and institute all the time. I'm sure you've heard a lot of times in your life that communication doesn't only consist of what's said, it's what's understood. And I'm going to extend that to include also what is retained and what is remembered. So in order to increase attention to a policy or procedure that you want employees to engage with, you need to make the instructions as clear and unforgettable as possible. The best way to make your directives unforgettable is to have them written down. Clearly state the process, and if you can, provide some way that your employees are reminded of their importance on a regular basis. And this is especially true if processes are complicated, or maybe they're not things that are required every day. So there's a reason that when you go to the car wash, when you're pulling up in the car wash, there's a sign there that says, roll up your windows. It's an obvious thing, but it's something that we forget all the time, and it's a necessary process, but we need those reminders because we're not engaging in that activity all the time. So if you can, provide some way that your employees are reminded, like maybe a screen pop-up on their service device or their iPad, or even a list of tasks just posted on the dashboard of your trucks. Or maybe in weekly or daily team meetings, highlight a goal for the week. So maybe this week it's 100% of you fill out your time cards, or 100% of customers get a call back according to schedule to check their satisfaction. And that can tie back into the leaderboard scenario if you're tracking those numbers. Pay careful attention though if you're seeing a drop-off in one behavior when you emphasize another, if there's another goal for the week, because that might require some going back and investigating the different types of resistance and finding out why they don't think that task is as important when they're focusing on this other task. So this begs the really important question, is this going to work? And I will tell you, not all the time. There's no magic bullet to change management. There's always going to be room for resistance to exist, even if you're doing all the right things. After all, we're dealing with human resources, with people. But you can increase your chances for encouraging the success and build a good foundation for inspiring trust in your directives if you do these things. Don't focus on doing all the things that I've pointed out in this presentation. Never let perfection stand in the way of moving towards not even something good, but just something better. So what I've provided you with are some tips on how to recognize what types of resistance you're seeing from your employees, how to promote their compliance by essentially dismantling that resistance piece by piece. I'll remind you once again that people don't ignore your directives because they don't care or they want to make you angry. There's always a reason for counterproductive behavior or non-compliant behavior when we see it in the workplace. And once you start to understand those reasons, you can then use the appropriate tools to address them. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm going to leave the chat box open for a little while to see if we got any questions. It looks like somebody replied a while ago. What if my least cooperative employee is the best electrician I've got and has been with us the longest, and everyone else looks up to him, parentheses, asking for a friend. Great, that's fun. So likely they don't buy into why this process is important to them, don't buy into why it's important to the customer, or don't believe that their job depends on them doing it. That happens a lot with people who are in senior positions. They believe that they're, maybe untouchable. So it's important to emphasize that behavior is negatively impacting them. So, and ask them what they propose to do to fix it. So you might tell them, you've been here so long, you really understand how things work in this organization. Your thoughts on a new process to replace this one would be really, really valuable. And what you've done there is you've engaged the complainer, you've asked him to be innovative, and if he comes up with a good idea, you've got a built-in person to champion that idea and get the rest of the team on board, because everybody follows what he does anyways. So you want him to be engaging in positive behaviors. Okay. I hope that answered your question. Other question, I see this all the time. I can't just fire or discipline my employees every time they don't follow procedures. They're way too valuable. So yes, absolutely. The job market is tough in a lot of areas right now. specifically in the trades. So I get it. If you fire somebody, you're going to have to cancel jobs. You're going to have to reschedule jobs. You're probably going to lose customers. But it's so important to understand that you can't let one bad employee poison the rest of the team. If you can, you should always be looking out for new talent and try to take steps to build what we call the talent pipeline. So you've always got people lined up so then you don't feel pressured to hang on to the people that are those poor role models for the rest of the company. And when they really screw up and when they show you that they're, through their behavior, that they are not invested in the shared vision of the company, then you can make those tough decisions and hopefully get back on your feet with a full staff, quickly and efficiently. Well, I think that's all the questions that I see. But I will say, if you enjoyed this webinar, this is exactly the kind of consultative analysis that we offer to Pointman Pact members. So if you're interested in more information, you can go to pointman.com or check your email for a free demo link. Our next webinar on another exciting topic that I'm not sure what it'll be yet is going to be on May 30th, which is another Thursday. And I hope to see you there. Thanks for attending.